Have you ever watched something so haunting on television that it seemed to vanish afterward as if it never existed? Imagine broadcast nightmares so disturbing they were shown only once, then locked away by terrified networks. These are not urban legends, but lost fragments of British TV horror where realism crossed a line and the nation recoiled. These episodes blurred truth and fiction until even their creators disowned them. Number 12. The Stone Tape, 1972. When it aired on Christmas night, the Stone Tape shocked British households expecting a gentle ghost story. Written by Nigel Neal, the creator of Quatermass, it told of scientists in a haunted mansion attempting to record the past through psychic vibrations embedded in the walls. The concept was bold scientific horror instead of superstition. Viewers were fascinated, then horrified. The haunting was portrayed as an experiment gone wrong, where technology itself became possessed. The eerie sound design and cold lighting made it feel less like fiction and more like a BBC documentary from another dimension. People swore they could feel vibrations in their own living rooms as if the broadcast carried the haunting through the airwaves. But the real fear came from the ending. The walls of the mansion absorbed a woman's death scream, trapping it forever, while the researchers succumbed to madness. Some BBC technicians refused to rebroadcast it, claiming the studio's electronic systems malfunctioned during taping. Critics called it too real, too cruel for holiday viewing. Neal's blending of scientific inquiry and supernatural dread unsettled not just audiences, but broadcasters who quietly buried it after its single broadcast. For years, it circulated only in rumors and bootleg VHS copies passed around by late-night horror fans. Today, it survives as a chilling prophecy about technology capturing human trauma. It asked one terrifying question: what if ghosts are not spirits at all, but data that never dies? Number 11. Ghostwatch, 1992. It was meant to be harmless Halloween fun, a live BBC event where beloved presenters explored a haunted London house. But Ghostwatch went far beyond entertainment. It simulated a real broadcast complete with technical glitches, studio panic, and terrified phone-ins from viewers at home. The nation believed it. People thought they were witnessing a haunting unfold live on air. Children cried, adults called emergency lines, and some even claimed poltergeist activity in their own homes. The program's fake spirit named Pipes became a cultural nightmare whispered about for decades. BBC producers expected ratings gold. What they got was outrage. Newspapers accused the network of psychological warfare. Parents demanded bans. Mental health hotlines were flooded by traumatized viewers. One tragic incident involving a young viewer later led to Ghostwatch being permanently banned from repeat transmission. Behind the scenes, the cast was shaken too. Presenter Sarah Green received threats from those convinced she had unleashed real evil. The writers never expected such hysteria, but the BBC locked the tape away for over a decade. When it resurfaced years later, critics reappraised it as one of the most daring pieces of television ever made. It predicted the rise of found footage horror long before Blair Witch or Paranormal Activity. Ghostwatch blurred the line between news and nightmare, and Britain was never the same again. It remains television's most forbidden broadcast, a reminder that the scariest ghosts are the ones we invite into our homes by choice. Number 10. Dead of Night, The Exorcism, 1972. The BBC anthology. Dead of Night produced several chilling episodes, but The Exorcism was the one no one wanted to remember. It was a claustrophobic horror filmed entirely inside a modern country cottage on Christmas Eve. A dinner party between four friends turns into a seance when the lights fail and ancient voices rise from the walls. The story sounds simple, yet its execution was pure terror. Instead of jump scares, it used silence, slow camera pans, and whispered guilt. The haunting came from the sins of privilege. The cottage was built on land stolen from the poor centuries before, and the ghosts of the starving returned to claim vengeance. Viewers expecting cozy seasonal drama were blindsided. The episode's bleak social commentary hit too close to home. Its attacks on class inequality and moral decay angered conservative politicians. The BBC pulled the entire anthology from circulation, calling it psychologically harmful. Even the cast described a strange atmosphere during filming. Electrical failures ruined takes, and one camera operator swore he saw a shadow moving where no actor stood. After broadcast, strange reports came in from viewers who claimed their screens flickered or their furniture shook during the climax. The episode aired once, then vanished from British television for decades. When a rare copy resurfaced in the archives, it became a cult treasure studied by filmmakers for its quiet dread and moral rage. The Exorcism remains a lost sermon about guilt and consequence, reminding us that sometimes the ghosts are not haunting us for revenge, but for justice. Number 9. Beast's Baby, 1976. Nigel Neal returned to television horror with Beasts, a chilling anthology that replaced monsters with human fear. But one episode, Baby, was so disturbing, it caused the series to disappear from broadcast rotation almost instantly. It opened like a domestic drama. A young couple moves into a remote farmhouse, eager to start anew. During renovations, the wife discovers a jar hidden in the wall containing something that looks like an unborn animal wrapped in ancient cloth. From that moment, reality collapses. The house fills with strange sounds. Animals outside grow restless. The pregnant wife begins to unravel, as if the jar has awoken something primal and ancient inside her. Unlike supernatural thrillers, Baby had no comforting logic. The horror was biological, earthy, and intimate. The imagery of decay and pregnancy disturbed audiences who called the BBC's switchboard in disgust. Many demanded the episode never air again, claiming it was unfit for television. Behind the scenes, Neal defended the script as a metaphor for psychological breakdown and rural superstition. But BBC executives disagreed. They quietly buried it in the archives, citing audience trauma. Even repeat airings of the Beasts anthology excluded Baby as if it had never existed. Years later, when fans recovered it from private collections, they found its power undiminished. There were no cheap scares, no monsters, just slow suffocation and dread. Its legacy remains as one of British television's most psychologically invasive stories, a warning that true horror often begins at home. Baby asked, what happens when we peel away civilization and hear something ancient moving beneath our own skin? Number 8. Armchair. Theater, The Trial of Dr. Fancy, 1964. Grenada, television's armchair. Theater was known for pushing social boundaries, but The Trial of Dr. Fancy crossed one that British audiences were not ready to face. Broadcast once, then pulled the episode told of a respected village doctor accused of unethical medical experiments during wartime. The story was staged like a courtroom drama, but the tone was pure nightmare. The doctor defends his actions, claiming that science demanded sacrifices. Witnesses describe unseen horrors hinted at through lighting and sound. As the verdict approaches, the courtroom walls begin to crumble, revealing that the entire trial might be taking place in the doctor's own deteriorating mind. Viewers were shaken. The BBC and Grenada received letters accusing them of glorifying war crimes. Historians claimed the story too closely resembled real experiments carried out under British supervision after the war. Under pressure from government advisors, Grenada removed the tape and refused to release it for syndication. Actors involved later said the episode felt cursed. The lead performer reportedly collapsed during filming after delivering the final speech about guilt and madness. The footage was rumored to have been reused in another production after the master tape was destroyed. For decades, only fragments survived: production stills, scripts, and memories from crew members. Scholars now view The Trial of Dr. Fancy as an early example of moral horror television. It forced the public to confront the ethical rot beneath post-war pride. It vanished because it told the truth, and Britain was not ready to hear it. Number 7. Play for Today, Penda's Fen, 1974. When Penda's Fen aired on BBC One, it did not feel like television at all. It felt like a revelation. Directed by Alan Clark and written by David Rudkin, it followed a teenage boy in rural England experiencing visions of angels, demons, and ancient kings. It was a coming-of-age story buried inside a pagan apocalypse. Critics praised its poetic language, but many viewers were horrified by its imagery of decaying churches and ghostly soldiers walking through the Midlands. It mixed Christian symbolism with pre-Christian mysticism, something that made both religious and political groups furious. The BBC initially supported it as a bold artistic statement, but quickly panicked when letters poured in. Some viewers accused it of blasphemy, others of nationalist propaganda. The network refused to rerun it, labeling it too controversial for public viewing. Behind the camera, Even the crew described the filming as unsettling. Clark demanded long, single takes under freezing fog, and actors reported strange electrical interference on set. After airing, it simply disappeared from broadcast rotation for decades. Yet its legacy grew underground. University archives preserved a few copies, and filmmakers like Ben Wheatley and Mark Gatiss later cited it as a masterpiece of British folk horror. When finally reissued in digital form, it was hailed as visionary television decades ahead of its time. Penda's Fen remains a ghost signal from a Britain divided between faith and folklore, a country haunted by its own buried myths. Number 6. Doomwatch. The Plastic Eaters, 1970. When Doomwatch premiered, it promised hard science fiction with moral weight, but its debut episode, The Plastic Eaters, delivered something far more apocalyptic. It opened with a chilling image, a plane melting mid-air as its plastic components dissolved into liquid horror. What followed was a grim investigation by government scientists uncovering a man-made bacterium that devoured plastic, the very foundation of modern civilization. Audiences expecting campy thrills were instead greeted with realism. News-style camera work and medical jargon made the fiction feel alarmingly plausible. Scientists at the time even worried that the episode's fictional enzyme could inspire real experiments. The BBC was flooded with inquiries from viewers who believed the outbreak might be real. The reaction terrified the network. Although the show continued for several seasons, The Plastic Eaters was quietly pulled from rotation after a single repeat. Executives feared national panic if viewers mistook the episode for a real emergency broadcast. Behind the scenes, production chaos only deepened the myth. The pilot suffered from last-minute rewrites, chemical effects that corroded props, and a near fire when synthetic materials used on set reacted unpredictably under studio lights. Cast members swore the atmosphere felt cursed. For decades, the episode was thought lost, erased like many BBC tapes of the period. When it resurfaced in the 90s, it was restored for academic study, but never shown again on national television. Its legacy lives on as one of British television's most prophetic eco-horrors, foretelling a future where humanity's inventions consume their creators. Doomwatch asks the question that still echoes today: what happens when progress becomes the predator? Number 5. Out of the Unknown, The Dead, Past, 1967. Adapted from Isaac Asimov's story, The Dead Past was meant to be thought-provoking, not terrifying. Yet its exploration of surveillance and time left viewers shaken. The episode followed a scientist who invents a chronoscope, a device that can view the past. At first it seems a tool for historians, then comes the revelation it can only see the past of the present world, meaning anyone, anywhere can be watched at any moment. The BBC's dramatization used eerie stillness and industrial sound to convey dread. The government in the story seizes control of the device, claiming it must remain secret to protect privacy, but the scientist leaks the plans to the public, leading to societal collapse. The closing shot showed every person now exposed, no secrets left anywhere. After its initial broadcast, viewers were outraged by the hopeless ending. Some accused the BBC of promoting anti-government sentiment. Others thought the story predicted real intelligence projects. Under pressure, the corporation banned repeats and destroyed the master tape, a common but tragic practice then. Even Asimov himself later said the adaptation frightened him more than he expected. Surviving audio recordings reveal a stark minimalist performance that feels decades ahead of its time. When researchers reconstructed fragments of the dead past from archives in the early 2000s, it was hailed as a lost masterpiece. It predicted the surveillance society before CCTV, the internet, and data mining. It vanished because it hit too close to reality, a warning that privacy was only ever an illusion. Number 4. The Wednesday Play. Horror of Darkness, 1966. The Wednesday Play was the BBC's boldest drama series, tackling social taboos every week, but Horror of Darkness went too far. The episode followed a journalist investigating a coastal village where no one aged. Locals behaved with unnatural calm, while the outsider gradually realized the village had made a pact with an unseen presence in the sea, trading time for silence. Shot in stark black and white with real coastal fog, the imagery felt documentary-like. The soundtrack was built entirely from low-frequency tones, making audiences physically uneasy. Complaints poured in about nausea and fainting. The BBC defended it as experimental art until members of Parliament denounced it for corrupting public morals. Production lore claims the director suffered a breakdown before editing was complete. The final broadcast differed from the script, with scenes added that were not officially approved. One camera operator insisted he filmed movements in the fog that no one remembered staging. After airing, it was never shown again. The master negative was reportedly wiped, though crew rumors persist that a single print remains locked in BBC archives labeled "Do Not Transmit." Film historians later identified Horror of Darkness as a missing link between social realism and supernatural dread, a uniquely British mixture that influenced later works like The Wicker Man and Threads. Its disappearance seems fitting for a story about a village that traded its soul for silence because television, too, made that same trade when it erased its most unsettling truths. Number 3. Playhouse, The Other Woman, 1976. Playhouse was known for experimental British drama, but The Other Woman was an experiment gone wrong, or perhaps too right. It began as a psychological study of loneliness. A widow living in a quiet London flat begins receiving calls from another woman claiming to be her. The caller knows her thoughts, memories, and darkest regrets. As the episodes unfolded, her reflection began speaking independently, and her apartment grew colder with every unanswered call. By the final act, her doppelganger appeared in full view, played by the same actress. There were no effects, just clever staging and eerie performance. The broadcast felt like surveillance footage, not fiction. Viewers phoned the BBC in panic, saying their mirrors fogged or their televisions flickered during the final shot, when both women spoke in unison. The next morning, newspapers accused the BBC of triggering mass hysteria. The episode was condemned by religious leaders who called it an invitation to demonic possession. Executives immediately pulled it from any future schedule. Behind the scenes, the director John Bowen defended it as a metaphor for identity and grief. But the rumors only grew darker. Crew members claimed sound reels disappeared from storage, and an actress refused to work again, citing recurring nightmares. For decades, The Other Woman was lost, thought erased with countless BBC tapes. A partial print discovered in the early 2000s revealed its brilliance and its terror. Modern critics called it an existential ghost story ahead of its time. It remains a mirror. No one wants to look into a reflection that asks, what if the haunting voice inside you is just waiting for its turn to speak aloud? Number 2. ITV, The Deadline, 1981. Long before the found footage boom, ITV tried something bold and strange. The Deadline was a supposed documentary about phone lines carrying supernatural signals. It aired late one November night, featuring real presenters and staged interviews with engineers who believed the dead could communicate through crossed telephone wires. The effect was chillingly real. Static hums filled living rooms across Britain. Viewers reported hearing whispers during the broadcast, believing their own phones were haunted. Some even claimed to receive calls from disconnected numbers during transmission. ITV's switchboard collapsed under the flood of terrified viewers. Newspapers branded it irresponsible, calling it a national hoax. The network pulled it from archives, immediately promising it would never air again. Behind the camera, strange coincidences added to the myth. The sound engineer reportedly refused payment after claiming his headphones emitted voices during editing. A studio fire weeks later destroyed several reels, including most of the Deadline's master copy. Only a single surviving tape remains in private hands and has never been released publicly. For horror historians, it became legend, the British broadcast equivalent of a cursed film. Scholars say its realism influenced later mockumentaries like Ghostwatch, but with a colder, more scientific edge. The Deadline warned of technology becoming the new seance of wires as conduits for grief. It vanished because even fiction can cause real fear when it sounds too much like truth. Number 1. BBC 2. The Aberfan Broadcast, 1967. The most mysterious lost horror is one the BBC never officially admitted existed, known only as the Aberfan Broadcast. It allegedly aired once as part of a regional anthology called Shadows of Britain. The episode dramatized the 1966 mining disaster that buried a Welsh school, but presented it through surreal, dreamlike imagery, suggesting the dead children were trying to warn the living about future tragedies. The BBC archives list no such program, yet multiple viewers remember seeing it. They recall a narrator walking through an empty schoolroom as coal dust drifted like snow. They recall a child's voice reciting poetry over static. Some insist the film ended abruptly, replaced by a test card and a silent apology message. Decades later, internal memos surfaced referencing a pulled regional transmission regarding Aberfan with orders to destroy the print. Whether it was censored for taste or buried for reasons unknown, no one can say. Historians continue to debate whether it ever aired at all or if collective trauma created a false memory. But survivors of the disaster describe dreams eerily matching scenes from the alleged episode. The BBC denies everything, but whispers persist among archivists that a canister labeled ABF-67 remains sealed deep in storage. Whether myth or memory, the Aberfan broadcast stands as the ghost of British television, itself a story too painful to be real, yet too vivid to forget. So many of these stories vanished not through time, but through fear. Fear of outrage, fear of truth, fear of the mirror that television once held up to its own nation. Maybe those lost broadcasts were not destroyed at all. Maybe they are simply waiting to be seen again. Which of these would you dare to watch if it resurfaced? Like, share, and comment below before the signal fades.